Hi again. So we're going to continue with the theme about the memorable losses or painful losses, how you call it. They are never pleasant. But at least you hope to learn. Well, one thing is sure, the more you get closer to the end of your career, you have more of these losses. So this is like a clear sign. So I'm not surprised that today, just a couple of hours ago, I've read that Kramnik has announced that this will be his last tournament, at least his last serious tournament. Well, although they say that you can play chess, you know, almost all your life, but okay, your strength is not the same. So the moment, in my opinion, you reach around between 35 and 40, you don't have the same energy and you start making more mistakes. So it's about if you've played many tournaments, like for example I have played, your nervous system maybe is not the same. So there are a lot of components which influence your game. And I've here chose some games just at the end of my chess career. Well, this actually was meant to be the last tournament I had intention to play. This was the 78th Bulgarian Individual Championship. There was almost all of the best chess players, well, except the ex-world champion Vasilin Topal, but he didn't play for many years, and most of the best players decided to play this tournament. There were decent conditions, and although it didn't turn out to be the last tournament, but okay, after that I didn't play for more than 3 years, and after that I just played just for fun. But okay, this was actually the one tournament I considered the last one. And in this particular tournament I lost 3 games. Well, the first one was actually in the second round against a very famous grandmaster of ours, Kirill Georgiev. Well, by chance we went with him together in the melee. But anyway, this game was not so interesting, but also was a good sign that what's waiting for me during the tournament, because I was making some quite unpleasant mistakes in the calculation. I was spending more time than usual, but especially the 2 games I've chosen to show you today had a lot of memories for me, and not because in one of them, like the first one, I had good chances, and if I have won this game, maybe starting from this one, I could have won even the next 3 games too, and I've scored 2.5 instead of 4 out of 4. But okay, this is quite easy to explain, having in mind that you're not playing like you used to play. And the second one is also quite an interesting loss, because I think that I have to give credit to my opponent. He played very well, and is the kind of loss, well, you can try to find where you may have played better, where you mistake, but the truth is that my opponent played almost perfectly, and he found over the board an incredible novelty. But okay, let me first show you the first game, and then we'll take a look at the second one. Well, the first game was played against maybe this time he was already a grandmaster. I used to play one game with him in the Open Bulgarian Championship some years ago. I even won 2 of this championship in a row, and I won like a good game against him with black, so I felt quite comfortable in this game, and I was aiming to have like a good fighting position with both results on the board. This is like a term you hear me use quite often, but this is what I like when I choose my opening repertoire, to have like positions with the 3 results possible on the board. I don't like to play some kind of a more passive opening lines, which may be solid and which may be more appropriate for the top level tournaments. But when you play a lot of open tournaments, you gotta have your chances. And it doesn't matter if you play with white or black, you gotta have like fighting position. So he played c4, and against c4 I have very often played e5, and in most of the games you have either the reverse dragon, or either you have all kind of position like the reverse Sicilians. And why I choose this opening? Well, because I like, during all of my chess career, I have developed this chess taste. Of course, I have played all kinds of openings, but when you have experienced almost all of the openings, you tend to know yourself much better over the chessboard. So I prefer a position with a good space control. So I like to play like more central opening lines, and especially opening lines when I have space. So here I play e5, and sometimes, depending on the opponent, I can play knight f6, and if he plays knight c3, then I can play e5. Of course, I've played knight f6, knight c3, e6, e4 and different lines. But especially this opponent, I didn't have any doubts that he'll try to play like more flexible and maybe to keep the knight on b1, maybe to play against the reverse dragon with the knight on d2. So I played e5, knight c3, knight f6, g3. This is the reverse dragon. I've had a lot of games in this scheme and usually with good results. Knight b6, and here comes a move which probably was expected to be a surprise for me, but I already knew this move and I had an idea where probably black can get like a decent play. So this is like a rare scheme with e3. The most usual are like knight f3, castle, then a3, b4, or like knight f3, castle, d3, bishop e3, like solid play. So you have the reverse dragon and you have an extra tempo, which does not mean that you have an advantage. No, in many schemes you can play them with reverse colors, but the extra tempo just gives you a lot of flexibility, but does not mean that it gives you like an advantage, because it should be very easy if this was true. So e3, knight c6, knight g2, and here what I knew before this game, and that's why I played my idea with g6, because it's kind of felt like a decent line for me. I kind of felt that the following position which occurred in this game will give me like a very decent Grunfeld. Come g6, I just try to finish development. Well, it's not easy to prevent black to finish development. Like if you try to be a little bit tricky, a little bit it reminds me one line of the pen of attack. So when you try to put bishop on g7, they want to put bishop on a3. But of course it's very easy to prevent that. So you play a5, you can even play first bishop g7 and then a5, but here you put knight on b4, and probably this position you don't have any, reasons to complain, because the pawns in the center are really much more vulnerable than some kind of asset, which we will see in this game also. So the only move which a little bit worried me is when they play strictly for equality. So d4, but okay, when you're with black, you have to accept a certain option. So you can get like an advantage out of the opening. So d4 really does not give white anything, but at least it can give them a very equal position. So if they take, just show you one line. Let's play with the queen here. Why we play here c6? Well, because if I, take for granted that, okay, everything is fine, I play bishop g7, knight b5, no. Not very pleasant. No? So you have to take into account the opponent options. So you play c6, and he can play d5 and exchange a lot of material here. Although this position should not be any problem for black, no? Because the bishop on g7 compensates the bishop on d5, and the material is risky. It seems like a very drawish position, to be honest, but not a draw, so it can be played. But it seems an equal one. Well, he played castle, bishop g7, and now he plays what is expected. Now, when he can play d4, he plays f4, and this was the position I was aiming for. You can get a feeling, it's kind of quite a satisfactory Grunfeld for black. I haven't played much Grunfeld, so Grunfeld is one of the openings which was not really into my repertoire with black, although I repeat, I have played almost all of the openings, even the King's Indian a couple of times, the Dutch even, with some very interesting victories. But anyway, Grunfeld, I had one curious game with Russian International Master in which, in the sharp line with knight f3 and rook b1, where I had good victories even from my younger years with white, I just pushed my a pawn. So the whole game was I was pushing my a pawn, and it reached a2, and he resigned. So this was like a rather curious game. So this was a good memory from Grunfeld, but really not much of an experience. So for me, it was not so easy to play a Grunfeld position, but I had a feeling that this is a good one. Well, during this game, you see the major problem of me playing this game was that you have a lot of good options. And it has to do with one weakness which I had almost during the whole chess career. And you try to work on your weaknesses, but they never go away completely. And from time to time, they appear again. So one of these weak spots was when you have like 3-4 good options, which really does not have much of difference between them. So not that, for example, in one of the options you win material, in one of the other options you have like a positional advantage. No, they are very similar. Then I tend to use more time, which is not very typical because rarely I am in time trouble. This is one of the games in which there was like a kind of a time trouble, which really influenced the game. But here I spent a lot of time. Now I'll show you the moment. So knight c6, And my opponent played quite dubiously, not only the middle game phase, but I had, and I mentioned this in the commentary, I had real problems to guess his moves. Almost all of his moves were a surprise for me. So this happens sometimes. So here, for example, h3, which he played, in my opinion, looked like a loss of time. It seems more natural to play knight f4, because at least you try to react against queen e7 and rook d8. At least you try to control more squares. Well, I still can play like knight e7 to rearrange my pieces, but okay, this is a backward move, so you have to also to invest time, which is something you really like to do it, you know, in faster speed. So okay, even visually, white now has more active pieces. Well, I still can rearrange my pieces. Here I gave you like a couple of lines just to have an idea. Like for example, this is followed by c5. So you have problems in this position basically with the bishop on c1. So the bishop on g2 is good, but the other bishop suffers from the situation of these pawns on e3 and d4. And this is like a real strategic problem. If you just try first to play knight e4, rook goes into the open file, bishop d2, bishop d7. Now, knight c5 here, just to show you one idea, is not possible because of the trick knight takes on d4. No? Just a small tactical trick which helps. And after bishop takes on d4, the knight is hanging. Or for example, if you play knight f2, then the bishop goes to c6, and although you double your pawns, now the bishop on g2 has disappeared, the bishop on d2 is really not like a great piece, and there is a lot of weak light squares in your camp, which compensates the damaged pawn structure. And of course, we have to add the b file. So this should be enough, just to give you lines, like let's say rook b8, and now the queen does not have too many good squares. Like if you play here, c5 using, for example, the situation of the bishop on d2. Because if you take with the pawn, the bishop is hanging. If you take with the rook, bishop f8. Or if you just captures, if he captures the pawn on c6, well, I keep playing on this move, rook c6, then I can play bishop takes on d4. Still not a complex tactical shot, but after I take with a knight and I take the rook on c6, again the bishop on d2 is hanging, no? So, but still knight f4 is clearly a better move. So h3 does not feel like, you know, it's needed. So a5, quite a natural move, a4, and now I also played a rather natural move quite quickly, which in many occasions is a good sign also. You have to not to invest time where it's strictly not needed. Probably it was a little bit better to start with queen e7, because in some lines it gives you more flexibility. Just to show you these lines, like if he plays e4 here, you can start immediately attacking his center with c6, which is much into the Grunfeld spirit, no? In the spirit of this defense. So probably this was more flexible. I played knight before because kind of felt like a natural move. King h2, queen e7, and rook d8. Well, all of these moves seemed quite natural to me, so I didn't look much into here. It was possible like c5 and to play for a dark squared blockade, no? It seems definitely looks better for black, but I didn't pay much attention. I thought that the rook on d8 is a good square. I'm not sure if I'm right, but you can look at all the possibilities, no? So queen b3, c5, this was my intention, no? Well, here it's quite different, the approach of an engine and a human. I thought that c5, because okay, then you get a lot of squares for your pieces, and if he plays d5, you have d5 square, you can push c4, the knight can go to d3. Well, there is one piece which you have to think about. It is the knight on b6. So okay, you can get everything. So the knight on b6 is a little bit offside, so he has to go to... By the way, I thought maybe knight e7, knight e5, so I was quite happy with the position. Well, the engine approaches this position differently, but it includes a move which I didn't even look at it. So when I thought about this position, I thought, okay, if I play c6, which the computers like, and bishop e3, well, now the knight on b6 gives him additional motive. So this is where I stopped. But the engine continues, playing a move which, even if I see over the board, I will not be very, keen to play. And his ideas, of course, always include some tactical shots. Like here, take on d5, and at the end, You know, but okay, I mean, during a chess game, you don't look so further. So you have to be realistic. You can't look at such lines. If you look at c6 and you see bishop e3 and you have to play rook a6, I'm not very happy about it. So okay, this is like a different kind of a look at the game. So the computers have given us more options, but also this is my opinion, we can play like computers. So c5, and of course if he takes on c5, well then all of your pieces, then you don't have to worry about the knight on b6, no? The knight on b6, well here, of course, your stand just great because his king is bad. But okay, if he takes on c5, then all of your pieces go into play. So of course he plays d5, and now I have some memory that I thought quite a few minutes here on the next move, because you have too many good options. And maybe I played a move which is too subtle, so I started to, to play a little bit too smartly. I don't know if this is like a right term, but the natural move here should be like c4, and just to get your pieces to active square. But I kind of felt, okay, the knight on b6, maybe, I still have to put it on a better position, so I was not satisfied, although I didn't have reason. So here, black should have a rather good position in all the lines, and no need to show all the lines. They are having a very active position, so only one piece still needs to be redeployed, but it's not like a big problem. So I've kind of get a little bit greedy and I said, okay, I'll play bishop d7. Here, I really expected bishop e3, and then knight c8, and my last piece will get to a good square. Well, not immediately, because the pawn on c5, but okay, it will go after some time to d6, and at least all of my pieces are well placed. Maybe it was needed to play more dynamically, and of course even here you can play like first c4 and knight c8, but I don't like to give, the d4 square. I don't like to give the opponents, more options. So really this may be good for an engine, but I don't like it. So I prefer without the move c4. I prefer not to include this move because it gives, access to squares, which really makes his play easier. And what you want during a chess game is exactly the opposite. You want your opponent to have difficult decisions. Or if he have easy decisions, that it has to be a position when it doesn't matter. Because, okay, he can have an easy decision to resign or to play a losing position. Then I'm fine with it. But okay, in a complex position, I don't want him to have like easy decision. Because he saves time and okay, he feels more confident, no? So h4, well, this was a surprise to me. Because, okay, like a few moves ago, he played h3, king h2, now h4. Well, the idea is obvious, bishop g5, but he's weakening the g4 square, and bishop g5 does not really make his position better. So I kind of, started a little bit, maybe to lose a little bit of focus, because okay, he was playing moves which almost all of them I never expected. And after I play, for example, bishop g5, and you play, let's say, f6, which you can play in many other ways, then he can go to e3, because in most of the lines, this bishop can be hanging, so he has to go back. So that's why I really kind of start losing idea of what he wants to do. And here I played c4, although rook e8 seemed quite natural move, no? Here, bishop e5, and basically you control most of the important squares. And it's not good for him that he has played h4, no? So access to the square g4 is an additional bonus. So this was okay, but okay, I played c4, queen d1, bishop g4. Well, this was also a move which seems very natural. You put another piece on a good square, you pin his knight on e2. But I had doubts. I mean, there were a lot of good options. Even if, just to give you an idea how good is black position, you can even sacrifice an exchange here, which I didn't have an intention to do, because when you have a good position, no need to pretend that you are Morphy. But okay, even this position, the dark squared bishop you have, like an extra bishop and an extra controlled dark square, gives you a very good play. Probably the most practical was just to play rook, okay, after bishop g4, to play rook e8 instead of bishop g4, and you put all of your pieces on good squares, something like that, no? Exactly what you wanted to do. But still, the attraction of putting a bishop on g4 also is not too difficult to understand, because the bishop on g4 is a very active piece, no? So yeah, I played bishop g4, and I was really not worried about what followed, because I couldn't believe that this is good. And objectively it's not very good. So bishop g5, f6. Now you can go to e3, no? That's why I included c4, because then I take on d5 and the bishop is hanging. So he plays bishop g5, f6, and now he plays bishop c1. Well, if this is good, then everything, you know, you play over the chessboard can be considered interesting. So I thought that this is like a very good position for black. The only thing is how you rearrange your pieces. So you can start immediately with knight on b6, put it on d7, rook in c8, but you don't have something concrete, no? So okay, I've started with putting the knight on d3, still keeping the bishop on c1, and giving yourself a little bit more options. So sometimes even the knight on d3 is very powerful. Sometimes you can exchange it on c1 to transform your advantage, to give maybe a good access to the dark squares. So that's why I thought that knight d3 is a better choice. So he plays queen c2. I played knight d7. Well, here, of course, I could have exchange immediately and played here, but it gives him, you know, some squares for the pieces. And it gives him, and the knight on d3 was preventing that. So, okay, instead of that, I play first knight d7, so no need to take the bishop on c1, of course. Bishop e3, okay. And here, just to give you an idea how I think during the game, I never considered such a line. I don't know, but I kind of feel it's not logical to play something like that and to give him some natural moves, no? Take, rook e1. So suddenly, all of his pieces, which were quite passive, come into play. So this is now not my idea of how chess should be played. So I put the other knight on e5. So basically all of my pieces are on active square. The bishop on g7 is temporarily a little bit passive, but okay, still it has a good future, no? At least it felt like that. So knight d4, rook c8. And now another surprise. So I thought, no, he played bishop h3, but I thought that here he should play something like knight b5, rook e8, here queen d7. I have control over the board. I really didn't see what he can do, but at least I also don't have something like immediate, some concrete. I have just visually very good position, but okay, there is much work to do. So there is not like a concrete immediate plan. But instead of that, he's giving me exactly what I need. He starts weakening his position. He plays bishop h3 for some very cheap tactical stuff, and he forced me to play some very easy moves. So queen d7. Now, of course, to go back, it means just to, you know, to give an opponent an idea that you really don't know what you're doing. So he persists in his idea. He plays knight e6, rook e8, and now the position already, in my opinion, is quite bad, because when you've played bishop h3 and knight e6, there is no way back. For example, if you take, let's say, knight g7, and I take here, you're without light squares. And for example, in the game, he had problems also on the light squares, also on the dark squares. So, especially when you try to grab some material and your king is quite vulnerable, you can expect having problems on one type of squares or maybe on both types of squares, depending on the position. So he plays king g2, and now I play. This is really not a sacrifice, because it seems so natural move that I didn't spend any time on it. I really thought that here the position is with a big advantage. Probably I even considered it winning, but I thought that okay, this should be played by the hands. It's quite interesting that it didn't happen in the game. Well, there was like a slight time trouble, and it influenced some of the following decisions, but still it's no excuse. Now I'll show you, because there are a couple of very interesting moments. So I played this very easy sacrifice, although it's not a real sacrifice here, because you take an exchange for a pawn, and okay, around his king, I mean, and the bishop on g7 soon will be a b, so, and all of your pieces, knight on g4, knight on d3, I mean, this is not a real sacrifice. Bishop g1, and here I've calculated a line, and I thought that this line is winning. And because I've experienced it in my career, when I work on chess, that if you see some line and you really don't see why it should not work, you should follow, you should believe in yourself. And probably because of that, here a little bit out of emotions, I really played this line, which is the best move every engine will tell you. But still, it's a very unpractical decision. That's why, in my opinion, this is like subjectively a bad move. So here, black already had unobvious and visually very easy to spot positional advantage. So they can just play h5, you know, just gaining firm control of the light square. They can play rook e8. They just, you know, just can play a couple of solid positional moves, and the white position is going to fall apart because they don't have almost no square for their pieces. I can show you just a few lines, but although there is no need for lines, here many chess players will tell you that white just has problems all over the board. They just can't attack anything, no, because the knights really control everything. Or you can play like rook e8 and still continue with your plan. But I saw a concrete line here, and I thought, okay, it's winning. The problem with the concrete lines, when you have some sort of a shadow of a time travel or a real time travel, that depending of your strength and how you feel, and when especially you're in the end of your career, you may start seeing, and it's much more often in the end of a career, you may start seeing some kind of illusions or mirages over the board. And then, of course, very unpleasant things may happen. So here I played f5, which I thought that this is the end. And it's a very good move, but it needs, you know, to be sure of yourself. So, okay, here he doesn't have a choice. If he plays queen e2, queen c6, and okay, I mean, I don't see how he can resist this position. So he takes on f5, and here, before taking on f5, because he had even less time than me, it was not a real time travel. I saw that if he takes on f5, the whole line, which now I'll see you, seemed like winning for black. But when I get to this position, he took on f5 with some kind of a making some kind of a look that, okay, it's all right for white. I kind of started doubting, and I started checking all over the lines, although now you'll see it doesn't need to check them so much, because the position when I had starting doubt is a little bit, you know, too long. So you have to just to estimate, to evaluate the position. Maybe you are wrong, but you have to, you know, to trust your intuition. So the line where I started to head down was this one, instead of the move which I played very bad. Queen 6 check. This is a frost line. There is nothing better. If he covers, then okay, this pin cannot be sustained. So check. He has to play here well. The other line, no need, you know, to. This was very easy to spot. No, this. So the line which I started having down was a frost line. This check, queen takes on a1, and now I started having doubts not on f6. I thought that knight d5, and I started, you know, believing that my queen is offside, that suddenly the position is not clear. And I could have just trusted in myself and said, okay, you have enough material, so you need just one move to get the queen back, and probably nothing will happen. And if I have trusted and just went into this position, over the board, it was not difficult to find a couple of decent moves, like rook f8, f6, and here these are not only moves. Here you can play even bishop h6. But I kind of felt that, okay, maybe it's dangerous. I didn't calculate enough these lines after the game, and of course after the game I saw that, okay, it's, and you don't need to calculate many of these lines, because okay, the bishop on h2 is not playing, so there should be something for black, no? So these are lines, but okay, these are not difficult to spot over the board. You just have to believe that a position like this one, when you need just one tempo to get back your queen, and the material in this precise position is just a clear exchange up, and the bishop is on h2, so it has to be winning. So there is no doubt about it. Instead of that, I started, you know, thinking that maybe it's giving him chances. So okay, let's just take on f5, and I still have my initiative. And here I start missing things all the time. Anyway, having like a small time trouble and having doubts, this becomes like a real time trouble, and you start missing really important things. So g takes on a5 is a very bad move, because there was like a line which has been calculated. It was not a difficult one, and you just play against yourself, and it usually ends quite badly. So I take with the pawn. He plays a very simple move. Now, of course, checking here, he'll cover with the queen, so it does not lead anywhere. Still, it was better just to play like knight e5 and something like that. But okay, this was too complex to play after I have not entered into a frost line, which was much easier. So instead of that, I go into the end game, which is not a bad one, but still you have to play some good moves. So rook d1, and there comes the the critical mistake which loses the game. But you are witness that, you know, the real big mistake was done much, you know, a couple of moves before that. Because here you start to lose faith in yourself. So the probability of making bigger mistakes, when probably I have here like 5 minutes, is becoming quite real. Because you're already not sure of yourself. You've one time you doubted your decision in a position where, you know, it was decided a couple of moves because you have to go to this position. And now, of course, it's an end game, which I knew that this end game probably black has enough for the exchange, but nothing more. And here, instead of rook f8 and just defending the pawn, which now may seem natural, I thought, okay, I still have to continue play actively. So you're making some kind of a transfer to what was before, when you had the initiative you were attacking, to an end game. But okay, this is not the same position, so you can play, you know, with the same notion that I am better, I have active pieces, because here the king does not have, you know, the same kind of danger, so nothing like that. And I just play a kind of a blitz move, rook e8, which just misses a very simple tactic. Well, maybe not a very simple tactic, but quite enough for my opponent to see it. And after that, it was all downhill from this moment. So he just takes on f5, and it turns out that if I take, he plays king f3 with a double attack, and you just exchange down, no pieces, not much piece on the board, and the game enters into a technical phase, which really was quite unpleasant feeling, no? Well, here I try to kick a little bit, but still, I'll show you at the end of the game, there was not much to do. So I play rook e5, he takes, and okay, the rest of the game was just agony, and it didn't need, my opponent with white didn't need to show some great technique. So I just tried, you know, looking for some miracle to happen, but okay, usually after you've played like that, they don't happen. Now you have two pieces for a rook, but okay, his pawns and the rook is super active and the king is super active, so I mean, no chance at all, not even a small practical chance, no? So rook c5, knight e6, well, the rest is really a very simple technical position, no? And here I resign because, okay, the pawn just go and he takes everything. So this was a rather disappointing game for me. But okay, you have to accept that, okay, it's not like it used to be, so you start making more mistakes. After that, I played some interesting games, and this was in the 4th round of the tournament, and in the penultimate round of the tournament, it was a round robin, 10 players. I played against Grandmaster Nikolov. He's a much younger player, which I've already played 3 games against him. I have won 2 very good games, and important ones, and also one he plays with white. I won one in the Nimzo Indian with Queen C2, a very crushing game. And the other one I was in the Pausen with white, also a crushing game. And once in the team championship he played again Queen C2 in the Nimzo, which I have a lot of experience with black. And he played very solid, and it was a normal draw, so there was nothing much happening. So in this game, I had, you know, good memories. Also, like this opponent, I've never have lost against him. So against Nikolov, I thought, okay, maybe this is like a good chance to continue the good results with him. But it didn't meant, it was not meant to happen like that. So let's see this game. Well, this game also has some history which I have to tell. So when I started playing less and less, I was working in my main students for some kind of a really by luck, they both were playing the Tarrasch. And okay, you have to adapt to the students you are coaching. So I studied a lot and I've analyzed a lot the Tarrasch. So even at the beginning I shared with them that Tarrasch has some kind of a handicap. So there are a lot of positions in the Tarrasch, like at least 4 to 5 positions when there are 2 results on the board. I mean, black have to do some kind of a miracle to have winning chances. And this is the kind of handicap which this opening has. So here in this game, I was really not inclined to play Tarrasch. But before that, I mean, in this tournament, I've looked at some games of his, and I didn't see much of an interesting line that he played with white against Tarrasch. And because I've studied it a lot, I said, okay, let's try the Tarrasch. Although if I knew that he's going to surprise me even on the second move, I would have played the counter Gambit Albin. I played in the second round against Kirill Georgiev. I've lost this game, but still it was not like a bad opening position. But after d4, d5, I didn't want to go now for the Nimzu, because okay, now I wanted to experiment like in the last planned tournament, like a kind of a new openings, although Tarrasch was never a happy opening for me. It brought me a very important victory in one of the tournaments, 2012, but it was mainly as an opening surprise. And then white went into a position which is very complex with 3 results. Well, this game was completely different. So here my opponent played c4. Well, I am not prepared to play against him Albin. The counter Gambit Albin, let me show you, is c4, e5. Well, it's not very solid, and it's not completely correct, we have to be honest, but I have analyzed it a lot with my students, just to give them a little bit feeling for sharper play. I've used to look at Morozevich ideas, and I developed some of them. I have a lot of interesting analysis. But because Nikolov was playing in this tournament always knight f3, so that's why I never expected that he'll play c4 here, so I never prepared to play counter Gambit Albin against him. But he plays c4, which now gives him more access to different Tarrasch schemes. But I have to keep with my decision to play Tarrasch, and he goes into one of the major lines. Well, there are a couple of like 3 or 4 lines where you can trust me that black always have to suffer, and at least the best they can get is slightly inferior position with like 20 or 30 moves guaranteed suffering. So that's why I don't like really this opening. But he goes here for d takes on c5, bishop c5, a3. This is one of the most modern lines. Black always has problems, and I mean such problems that they started to play knight e4, this gambit, which, if you accept the sacrifice pawn on d5, gives you some compensation in an endgame, or if you play queen c2, it's kind of a get a slightly inferior position, but you're holding it out. Of course, this kind of opening play with knight e4, it was never to my liking. So when I analyzed this modern a3 with his dear, to Fianchetto, his bishop on b2 in most of the lines, but with with gaining more space. So not with b3, but with a3 and b4, because space is very important in chess. So when I look at this, I thought that the idea which I found was giving black a satisfactory play. So I analyzed rook e8, b4, bishop f8. This was played, and here the idea which I found was on bishop b2 to play bishop g4. And the main idea, just to show you the idea, was this one, to exchange the light squared bishop, which is quite unusual, and using the b4 to sacrifice a pawn on b5, knight e5. Also the same could have been played if he doesn't include rook c1. Well, no need to go into heavy analysis, but this was a rather interesting, and I wanted to try it. Well, it was a surprise for me that Nikolov played the whole line, and he didn't went for bishop b2. He went for bishop g5, which, as far as you knew, was not like a dangerous move. So after I saw bishop g5, and he used to think in the opening, I played bishop e6, and just don't think that I came in prepared. I have looked at this position, and I never saw like a dangerous line. Just a couple of ideas. If you place e3, it means that this bishop has to be exchanged. So bishop e7, h6, and the bishop has to be exchanged. If you place rook c1, the same. Or h6, if you place knight d4, you play h6, and then he doesn't have like a very good square for this bishop. For example, if he goes back, let's say here, if he takes on e6, you take with a pawn, no? Because it makes your pawn center much healthier and a good one. Now you take, and now of course you use the fact that he has played a3 and b4, so you have access to c4, and this is good for you. And if he takes on f6, this is a solid option, but I didn't see some real problems. So the position looks like an equal one, no? Rook e1, rook e8. Well, it's also a very dry one, so you also can witness some of the handicaps of the Tarrasch. But okay, I mean, sometimes you play what you have on the board. Well, my opponent here thought for over 30 minutes, and sometimes you have some kind of a like a fate revenge or something, because I remember many years ago, this has not been included in this comment, like at least 30 years before this game, there was a game in the dragon, in the fianchetto dragon. When black plays the dragon and white played a positional scheme with g3, bishop g2. So there was a game between Toshkov with white, these are Bulgarian players, and Semkov, who is international master and was an editor of my Czech books, a good friend of mine. So there was an idea in the positional line of the fianchetto with bishop g2. They play knight d5 white, and they play rook a2, with the idea then to play b3 and c4. So this rook a2 was played in this game Toshkov-Semkov. Oh, Toshkov has not invented this idea, he has seen it in some Russian game, I think. And the comment, I still remember it, and I was having a very good laugh. So the comment of some of my friends was, well, this rook a2, it felt over Semkov's game as if atomic bombing exploded over his head. So I was laughing because I was imagining Semkov and his, something like that happening, and I was laughing and saying, it's very funny. But okay, after many, many years, I had the very good luck, to have the same move played against me with almost the same crushing effect. So here, after 30 minutes, I was walking and I was quite, all right with the opening position. I came over the board and I saw rook a2 going under the bishop e6. Well, I needed like between 5 to 7 minutes to understand that this is a very unpleasant move. And not only unpleasant, I understood that most of the position, especially the type position, I didn't want to have in this opening. Just there is two results on the board, and there is like an eternal suffering in front of you. So the move has a very clear idea. It wants to go to d2. Also, it defends the second rank. So now you have to consider bishop f6 and knight d5 with a clear extra pawn. And just ask you what you are going to do about that. Well, I thought, and even I had, like this was played like in the 17th of May. A couple of days after that, I was even, when I go to sleep, I was still thinking about it. What did I do wrong? Could have done something better? But still, until this day, I haven't found. Well, I think that this is like a great opening novelty and basically cancels out this whole line for black. So it can be played if you want to suffer, no? But this is not like something I really enjoy. So here, the basic idea, if he plays bishop e7, he plays rook d2, and now he just takes the pawn. And okay, you can pretend here that you have some kind of compensation. Here I even gave in my command that before going to sleep a couple of days ago, I wanted to make this, work, to make this position to have some compensation. But still, after spending some time, it's not really working exactly. If you play like d4, he plays rook d2 and just takes the pawn. And still, no real compensation for the pawn. So instead of giving up material, I decided, okay, and take into account the rook on a2. Basically, what happened in the game after they play rook c8, he plays bishop on f6. So if I take on f6 with the queen, knight d5, so the pawn on e2 is defended. No, this is rather important. Okay, something which I have not included, but let me show you the board. So if you take with the queen, let's say I can take here. And you have an extra pawn. Okay, you can try to play for some cheek tricks probably here. You can take bishop takes here. Even if I take on b4, play queen b3 and take on, I'm, in my opinion, clearly better. But I can even play here, queen b3, and then I'll take on b7, no? So I keep having an extra pawn. And still, the different pieces on the board, the different kind of bishops, make this touch even more unpleasant, because he's going to play on the squares where you don't have, natural defenders. So it makes your position worse. It's not getting it better. Or if it was in one flank, well, maybe you can hold on. But when you have pawns on both flanks, it's really difficult. So I decided here, just at least to keep material equality. Of course, it was like very painful for my eyes to look at my pawn structure. And the whole game is a very good example how important is the pawn structure in chess. So I took here with the pawn, but already I knew that this position is very unpleasant. Knight b5. Still, here, I wanted to play a5, but somehow I felt that it's still like a difficult position. So after I analyzed after the game and during the game, I didn't believe that it's enough. It's quite curious that when I look at this game, like maybe more than 2 years after that, it was played. So this was like the last game in this line, and after 2 years, somebody ventured to play it again. And of course, it had bad luck. So here they tried a5, which seems like a better move, but basically the difference is not much. You're still left with a bad pawn structure and with a clear positional problem. So after a5, take knight d4. I think that I can even find the game which was played, because I think that it's a rather instructive, and I don't know why they went into this position, because this position is clearly a difficult one to play. He has a very solid pawn structure and can have a lot of weak spots to attack. All of your pawns are like, potential targets. So h7, f6, f7, d5. This is like, some kind of a fruits which are waiting to be gathered. So the game which I found in 2016, the last game in this line, was rook g3, a4, rook c4, a3, rook e8, and now of course he starts, attacking your pawns. And okay, here positionally he should be lost. They won the game quite easily. Rook b1. I don't remember what they played here. The black I didn't gave here the whole game, but here already the position is very bad. No, I mean he's attacking the pawn on b7, and what can you do about it is a mystery. Meanwhile, this is even a double attack on the pawn on f6. Well, I decided not to include a5, just to wait for a better moment. By the way, still, it does not help much into the position, no? So, queen b6, knight d4. Now you can play a5, so you can play this in many occasions, but still enough left material on both flanks. So, you'll be happy if you get something which really is not easy to achieve. So, if you can get exchange like a lot of pieces and get exchange d5 and b7 for the pawn on a3, and get some kind of a position on one flank, maybe you can hold it on. But even this is not easy to see how it's going to happen, because for him it's much easier to attack on the b line and on the light squares, the pawn on d5, then you can get access to his pawns, no? And it's not really clear how it's going to happen. So here, even if you play a5, he still gets his position and his pieces on a very natural squares. And then rook b1. And because of the very terrible pawn structure you have, you basically have to sit and to look how he improves his position and starts attacking your. And one of the basic advantages of his position, he decides when he wants to exchange something, when he wants to change the pawn structure, because it's so damaged for you that in one moment he can take on e6 whenever it's advantageous for you, or he can put the pawn on a4. So it's very difficult for you to touch any of his pawns. So I played here bishop g7. Because I thought that at least I can include my bishop with f5 and try, to get like more chances to have a defense position with chances to defend. But after bishop g7, e3, I started to make, okay, when you have this kind of a problematic position and your opponent plays quite well, you start, feeling the pressure. So you start making, not always, but when you're not in your best form, you start making some small concession. Here initially, I played bishop b7 because I wanted to follow with f5. But then, when it happened over the board, I was not very happy about knight takes on e6, and this is what I meant, that he can change the pawn structure because his pawn structure is much better whenever he wants. This is the advantage of having a good pawn structure. So he can take on e6, and in a way, it seems like good for you, but then he plays knight g5. And now I couldn't see how do you react on the threat knight takes on e6. Which seems very unpleasant. Well, it's not the only threat. He can also go queen h5. But suddenly the light squares, which is not a big surprise because, let's face, you don't have a light square bishop, becomes a real issue for you, So I couldn't see what can I do here. So I didn't play f5. So I changed. Oh, here all the time I have this very difficult choice, which of many evils I have to prefer, So this was a rather difficult game to play, and my opponent played very well, so this is true. So knight d4, it was not too difficult, because when you have like clearly defined targets in the enemy camp, it's not too difficult. It was much more difficult the game for me, than for my opponent. So f5, rook d2. Logically, he keeps the control. a5, and now a very good move. He doesn't give you any time. So he just keeps the necessary material. So instead of taking on a5, he just plays queen h5. Very good move. I take on b4, and he plays rook d1. So you have exchanged some pieces, but still your weak spots continue. So it's very possible that in some near future, maybe not so near, but quite enough, your pawns from f5, d5, and b7 disappear, no? Which, will change a lot, your feeling about the position. So it's not easy to imagine what really you can exchange to make your position better. And he can choose whenever he starts picking up here the pairs, let's call them, or the apples. So here I played rook c1, probably because I missed some tactical detail. I wanted to play bishop d4, but after I looked again at this line, which kind of felt that, okay, I can exchange out, it's still, you couldn't make the variation work. But okay, this is probably quite logical because your position positionally is not sound. I mean, you have too many weak spots. So here, this was my first intention. But still, even when on the board are left heavy pieces, you still have, bad king, bad pawns. Now you can, if you take on d5, he takes with a pawn, everything is hanging. He has now, as an extra pass pawn, very, very bad choice. So instead of that, I played rook c1. No, it's not really a tactic, but you're trying a little bit to confuse him. But he kept his line. Rook takes on c1, take rook d1. Everything is under control. And here I made a mistake which probably didn't influence the result of the game. But you start getting tired after calculating lines and always, seeing a position which is quite uncomfortable, and that it's a bad position. So instead of playing queen b4 and at least, defending the pawn on b7, although I didn't like here, not knight f5. No, after knight f5, at least you can push d4. No? Here you have some serious hopes. Like in position like that, well, the end game will be perfect, no? The opposite colored bishop, not much material. Well, this of course can be saved. But what I didn't like is, like we already mentioned, the possibility to change the pawn structure whenever he feels like that. So here he can take knight e6, something which in the line I played in the game, I just, after calculating a lot of lines, I just forgot about this possibility. This is the truth. So after I played queen g2, I forgot that he can take knight takes on e6, and you can take with a pawn. Very important, because the rook is hanging, no? So you have to be left with all the pawns on the light squares, so he doesn't have to reach very further, no? Just with the bishop collecting all of them, no? You don't have to be tired, no? So knight e6, rook e6, bishop d5. And okay, this also, in my opinion, should be a lost position. Okay, but at least you have the pawn on b7, no? At least, you can put more fight, you can pretend that not everything is clear, although this should be technically also a lost position, in my opinion. But I played queen c3, just really forgetting about knight on e6, and I get the same position with a slight bonus that missing the pawn on b7. Well, now it's very easy, and the rest was a quite easy technical task. I'll give you the game till a certain moment, because all of the game till then, I even don't remember, because it was like really in a desperate situation. Here he just kept picking up a pawn on every 5 moves now. So he just plays on the light squares as if he's on the piano. Here, rook d4. I was hoping for some kind of a miracle, but okay, it didn't happen. And now we play with 2 extra pawns. And he can always, attack me on the light squares. And in one moment he starts pushing the pawns. And when the pawns go to f4, e5, and okay, after that he has like the bishop here on the light squares, you don't have any space. So, yeah, here I have not included the rest of the game, but I can assure you that it was not, probably because I didn't kept it on the score sheet, but it was not difficult. So just he put his piece on the light square, started pushing the pawn, and one more therefore f4, e5, and okay, you can sustain the position because your king is weak, and almost all of the endgames are lost. Like the queen endgame is lost, and you can have like the bishop ending, no? Okay, this will be a dream, but it can happen, no? Because you can exchange the queens in such a... He just have to be careful about only one detail, just not to exchange the queens and to have some kind of a drawing chances. Because at least there, exist the chances, because this bishop, the corner is dark, so you can. But okay, it never happened. So this was a rather unpleasant loss, but I have to give the credit to my opponent, who created very good opening idea and played the whole game strictly positional and very good. So, the one thing I just have to add, that at least the last game, the ninth game, I wanted. At least, you know, the last game gave me a little bit a better taste in the mouth. But okay, this one was really unpleasant. So thank you very much, and I hope to continue with these bittersweet memories in the next occasions. Thanks.